I never thought my honeymoon would turn into a nightmare. But when my husband insisted his stepsister join us, my world began to crumble. The way she clung to him, touched him, and shared secret glances made my stomach churn. I told myself I was imagining things, until I found them locked in an embrace that shattered everything I believed in. What happened next changed my life forever. We were the couple everyone admired. High school sweethearts who beat the odds. Our wedding was a dream come true, and I believed our honeymoon would be the start of a beautiful new chapter. My husband, Ryan, was my best friend, my protector, and the man I trusted with my whole heart. Everything about us felt perfect, or so I thought. Ryan had always been close to his stepsister, Emily. I admired their bond, thinking it was sweet how they supported each other. She had been through a rough divorce, and Ryan often stepped in to help her. I never questioned it. Why would I? She was family, or so I kept telling myself. But when Ryan first suggested Emily should join us on our honeymoon, I laughed, thinking it was a joke. Who brings their stepsister on the most intimate trip of their lives? The moment I saw his serious expression, my laughter died. This is our time, I said, searching his face for reassurance, for some flicker of understanding. But he brushed it off. She needs this. She's been through a lot. And just like that, her needs outweighed mine. The weeks leading up to the trip felt surreal. I plastered on smiles, packed our bags, and tried to bury the unease bubbling inside me. I told myself Ryan loved me, and that everything would be fine. But deep down, something felt wrong. When we arrived at the resort, my unease turned into dread. Emily was already there, lounging by the pool as if she owned the place. Her presence was overwhelming, her laugh too loud, her touch too familiar. She hung onto Ryan's arm, her fingers grazing his skin, her eyes locked on his like no one else mattered. I tried to brush it off, telling myself I was overreacting. But the way he looked at her, the way his face lit up at her every word, made my heart sink. This was supposed to be about us, celebrating our love. Instead, I felt like an outsider in my own marriage. And the worst part, Ryan didn't seem to notice or care. Emily and Daniel had the kind of love that people envied. They met in college, bonded over late-night study sessions and coffee dates, and quickly became inseparable. Daniel was charming, dependable, and always made Emily feel safe, until now. Their wedding was nothing short of magical. Surrounded by family and friends, Emily felt like she was stepping into a fairy tale. The honeymoon was supposed to be the perfect start to their new life together. A week in paradise, just the two of them. Or so she thought. The first red flag appeared when Daniel casually mentioned that his stepsister, Claire, might join them for a few days. Emily laughed, assuming it was a joke. Your stepsister? On our honeymoon, she asked. But Daniel's face remained serious. She's been through a lot lately, he said. She needs this. Emily's stomach dropped. It didn't make sense. A honeymoon was meant to be intimate, sacred, a time to celebrate love and commitment. Why was Claire's comfort suddenly more important than hers? Despite her protests, Daniel stood firm. You're overthinking this, he said dismissively. She's family. The days leading up to the trip were a blur of half-hearted smiles and unspoken resentment. Emily packed her bags and told herself it would still be special, even if Claire tagged along. But the moment they arrived at the resort, her hopes crumbled. Claire was already there, lounging by the pool in a bikini that left little to the imagination. She greeted Daniel with a long, tight hug that made Emily's skin crawl. Claire's laughter was loud, her touches lingering, and Daniel didn't seem to mind. In fact, he seemed to enjoy it. Dinner that night only made things worse. Claire monopolized the conversation, sharing childhood stories and inside jokes that left Emily feeling like an outsider. The way Daniel's eyes lit up at Claire's words, Emily hadn't seen that look in months. Lying in bed that night, Emily tried to shake the uneasy feeling gnawing at her. Maybe she was overreacting. Maybe this was just Claire's way of coping with whatever rough time she'd been through. But deep down, Emily knew something was wrong. And as the days passed, her doubts turned into something darker, something she couldn't ignore. Emily tried to push down the unease bubbling inside her, but every passing moment made it harder. Claire wasn't just acting like a concerned stepsister. She was acting like something more. The first incident seemed harmless enough. They were by the pool, and Claire spilled her drink on her bikini top. She giggled, asking Daniel to help her adjust the straps. Emily watched in disbelief as Daniel obliged without hesitation, his fingers brushing against Claire's bare skin. Claire's eyes flickered toward Emily, a sly smile playing on her lips. Emily told herself it was innocent. Maybe she was being paranoid. But the doubts wouldn't go away. At dinner, Claire dominated the conversation again, this time steering it toward embarrassing childhood memories. "Remember that time we pretended to be married?" Claire teased, nudging Daniel's arm. He laughed, his gaze softening in a way Emily hadn't seen in months. Emily forced a smile, but her appetite vanished. She excused herself early, claiming a headache, and left them alone. Back in the room, she paced. Was she imagining things? Or was Claire deliberately pushing boundaries, and Daniel letting her? The next day, Emily decided to test them. She excused herself to visit the spa, claiming she'd be gone for hours. Instead, she returned early and headed to the bar near the pool. From a distance, she saw them. Claire was leaning in close, whispering something that made Daniel laugh. Then Claire reached out, touching his face. Emily's heart sank. That night, she confronted Daniel. "Why is she even here?" she demanded. "This is supposed to be our honeymoon." Daniel sighed. "You're being dramatic, Emily. She's family. She's been through so much. Can't you show a little compassion?" "But this is supposed to be about us," Emily shot back. "Not her." Daniel's face hardened. "I can't believe you're making this an issue. Maybe I should have married someone who trusts me." The words hit Emily like a slap. She turned away, tears burning her eyes. The final straw came 2 nights later. Emily had planned a romantic dinner. Just the two of them. She spent hours getting ready, hoping to remind Daniel of what they had. But when she arrived at the restaurant, Claire was already there, sitting in her seat and laughing at something Daniel said. "Oh, there you are," Claire greeted cheerfully. "We were just about to order." Emily froze. She wanted to scream, to demand answers, but instead, she smiled tightly and excused herself. "I'll eat in the room," she said, her voice trembling. That night, lying alone in their suite, Emily's fears finally consumed her. This wasn't just jealousy. It was betrayal. And the worst part was that Daniel didn't even seem to care. Her mind raced with questions. Had she been blind all along? Was there something more between them, something deeper, darker? As Emily stared at the ceiling, her heart shattered. She knew this wasn't the life she had signed up for. And she knew that the truth, whatever it was, would tear her world apart. The tension between Emily, Daniel, and Claire grew unbearable. Emily couldn't shake the feeling that she was an outsider in her own marriage, watching from the sidelines as her husband and his stepsister shared moments that felt far too intimate. It started with the little things, Daniel brushing Claire's hair off her shoulder, lingering eye contact, and inside jokes that made Emily feel invisible. But soon the boundaries blurred even further. One afternoon, Emily returned early from a spa appointment, hoping to surprise Daniel with some alone time. Instead, she found him in their suite, with Claire. Claire was sitting on the edge of the bed, wearing one of Daniel's shirts, her legs casually crossed. Daniel stood by the window, holding 2 glasses of wine. The air between them was thick with something unspoken. Emily froze. "What's going on?" Claire looked up, feigning surprise. "Oh, hey! I was just borrowing a shirt. I spilled something on mine." Daniel quickly chimed in, his tone too casual. "Yeah, Claire had an accident with her drink. I told her she could wait here while her clothes dried." Emily felt her stomach twist. The excuses felt rehearsed, practiced. Claire smirked as she stood and brushed past Emily, her hand grazing Daniel's arm as she left the room. That night, Emily confronted Daniel. "I need the truth," she said, her voice trembling. "What is going on with you two?" Daniel's face darkened. "You're being ridiculous," he snapped. "Claire is family. Why can't you just trust me?" "Because families don't act like this." Emily shouted, the dam finally breaking. "The touching, the way you look at her. It's not normal, Daniel." Daniel ran his hands through his hair, avoiding her eyes. "You're overreacting. She's been through a tough time, and I'm just trying to be there for her." Emily wanted to believe him, but the doubt was too strong. The next day, things escalated further. Emily had planned to spend time with Daniel exploring the island, but Claire insisted on tagging along. As they walked through the market, Claire slipped her arm through Daniel's and leaned her head on his shoulder. Emily trailed behind, feeling invisible. Later, at the beach, Emily watched as Claire and Daniel splashed in the water, laughing and playing like carefree lovers. Emily's heart pounded as Claire wrapped her arms around Daniel's neck, her body pressed against his. Emily stormed back to the hotel, tears streaming down her face. She couldn't take it anymore. She needed answers. That night, she decided to confront Claire directly. She knocked on Claire's door, and when it opened, Claire greeted her with a knowing smirk. "I need to know what's going on," Emily demanded. "Are you in love with him?" Claire's expression shifted, First to shock, then to something darker. "What if I am?" she said, stepping closer. "What if he loves me too?" Emily's breath caught in her throat. "You're his stepsister." Claire laughed bitterly. "You really think that matters? We've always been close. Closer than you know." Emily staggered back, her world spinning. The pieces started to fall into place. The lingering touches, the stolen glances, the shared secrets. Claire wasn't just a stepsister. She was something more. When Emily confronted Daniel later that night, he didn't deny it. "I thought I could move on," he admitted, his voice hollow. "But when I saw her again, I realized I couldn't." Emily's heart shattered. "You brought me here, to our honeymoon, just to humiliate me?" "No," Daniel said, reaching for her, but she pulled away. "I didn't mean for it to happen like this. I didn't plan it, but it didn't matter. The damage was done." As Emily sat alone in the dark, she realized the man she loved had never truly been hers. She was nothing more than a placeholder for a love he'd never let go of. And now she had to decide, would she stay and fight for him, or walk away and reclaim her dignity? Emily couldn't sleep that night. Her thoughts raced, replaying every moment, every glance, every touch she'd witnessed between Daniel and Claire. The truth clawed at her chest, leaving her breathless. She needed answers, real answers. In the morning, she woke early and left the suite. Her hands trembled as she knocked on Claire's door. It opened slowly, revealing Claire in nothing but a robe, her hair damp as if she'd just showered. "Emily?" Claire's voice dripped with fake concern. "What are you doing here so early?" Emily didn't wait for an invitation. She pushed past Claire and stepped inside. "I want the truth, Claire. No more games." Claire sighed, leaning against the dresser. "You already know the truth," she said quietly. "No, I need to hear it from you." Claire's expression shifted, and for the first time, Emily saw cracks in her confidence. "Fine," Claire said. "You want the truth? Daniel and I were together. Before you came along." Emily's heart stopped. "What?" "We dated," Claire admitted. "For 2 years. It was serious, but when our parents got married, everything changed. We tried to let go, but we couldn't." Emily staggered back, her mind spinning. "You're his stepsister," she whispered. "And you think that stopped us?" Claire shot back. "We were in love. And then you came along and ruined everything." Tears welled in Emily's eyes. "Ruined everything? I married him. He chose me." Claire laughed bitterly. "Chose you? Is that what you think? He only married you because he thought he could move on. But he can't. He never could." Emily's legs felt weak, but she refused to fall. "What about this trip? Was it all just some twisted plan to get him back?" Claire's eyes softened. "I didn't plan this. But when I saw you two together, I knew I couldn't let him go. And neither can he." Emily turned and stormed out of the room, her heart pounding. She needed to hear it from Daniel. Back in their suite, Daniel was waiting. "Where were you?" he asked, his tone sharp. "I was with Claire," Emily said, her voice shaking. "She told me everything." Daniel's face paled. "Emily, Don't," she snapped. "Don't lie to me anymore. Did you bring her here because you're still in love with her?" Daniel looked away, guilt etched across his face. "I didn't mean for it to happen like this. So it's true." Emily's voice cracked. "I thought I could move on," he said quietly. "I really did. But seeing her again, it brought everything back." Emily's chest tightened. "And what about me? What was I, Daniel? A rebound? A distraction?" "No." He stepped closer, but she backed away. "You were more than that. I love you, Emily. I do. But not enough," she finished for him. Tears streamed down her face. Daniel hung his head. "I didn't want to hurt you." "Well, you did," Emily said, her voice breaking. "You destroyed me." She turned and started packing her bags. Daniel tried to stop her, but she brushed him off. "You made your choice, Daniel. And now I'm making mine." As she left the suite, Claire stood in the hallway, watching with a mix of guilt and triumph. "You got what you wanted," Emily said bitterly. "I hope it was worth it." Claire didn't respond. At the airport, Emily sat alone, staring at her boarding pass. She felt hollow, broken, but also free. She wouldn't be anyone's second choice, not ever again. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "We need to talk." Emily's pulse quickened. She replied before she could stop herself. "Who is this?" The response came immediately. "Meet me at the cafe near gate 12. Against her better judgment, Emily went. She spotted a woman sitting at a corner table, her face pale and drawn. "Thank you for coming," the woman said, her voice trembling. "There's something you need to know." Emily sat down, her heart pounding. The woman's confession was even more shocking than Claire's. She was Daniel's ex, the one he had dated before Claire. And Claire had sabotaged that relationship too. She's manipulative, the woman warned. She can't stand losing. She'll do whatever it takes to keep Daniel under her control. Emily felt the pieces falling into place. The obsessive behavior, the possessiveness, it all made sense now. "Thank you," Emily said, standing up. "But it doesn't matter anymore. I'm done with both of them." As Emily boarded the plane, she looked out the window and felt something she hadn't felt in days: relief. She was leaving behind the lies, the betrayal, and the toxic love triangle. And as the plane took off, she made a promise to herself. She would never let anyone make her feel small again. Emily sat in her new apartment, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes and silence. It had been 2 weeks since she walked away from Daniel, Claire, and the web of lies they'd spun around her. But the echoes of betrayal still lingered. Nights were the hardest. She'd roll over, expecting to feel Daniel's warmth beside her, only to be met with emptiness. Memories of their laughter, shared dreams, and whispered promises haunted her. Yet, the image of Claire's smirk and Daniel's guilt-ridden face always brought her back to reality. She replayed their last conversation over and over. "You destroyed me," she had said. The words had hung in the air, heavy and final. She had expected him to fight for her, to beg her to stay, but he didn't. Instead, he had let her go. And that hurt most of all. Emily tried to drown herself in work, but every time her phone buzzed, she felt a flicker of hope. Was it Daniel? An apology? A sign that he regretted it all? But the messages never came. Claire, however, wasn't done. She sent texts, long, rambling ones, trying to justify her actions. "I didn't mean to hurt you. It's not what you think. You and Daniel were never right for each other." Emily deleted every message without responding. She wasn't interested in excuses. She wanted closure, but she knew she wouldn't find it in their words. One day, Emily received an email that changed everything. It was from Daniel. Subject: "I'm sorry." Emily stared at the screen, her hands trembling. Against her better judgment, she opened it. "Emily, I don't even know where to begin. I never wanted to hurt you, and I hate myself for what I did. The truth is, I was scared of letting go of my past, scared of losing someone who had been such a big part of my life. But that's no excuse for how I treated you. You deserved better. I wish I could go back and change everything, but I can't. All I can say is that I'm sorry. I hope you find happiness, even if it's not with me. Daniel." Tears blurred Emily's vision. She wanted to scream, to curse him for taking so long to say the words she'd needed. But instead, she closed the email and hit delete. It was too late. In the weeks that followed, Emily started to rebuild. She joined a gym, made new friends, and even went on a few dates. But trust didn't come easily anymore. Every smile, every compliment felt like a trap, a setup for heartbreak. One evening, as Emily was walking through the park, her phone rang. It was Daniel. Her stomach flipped, but she didn't answer. She let it go to voicemail, then listened to his message. "Emily, I just need to hear your voice. Please call me back." She didn't. Instead, she blocked his number. She was done being his second choice, his backup plan. Weeks turned into months, and slowly, Emily began to feel like herself again. She redecorated her apartment, started painting, and even traveled solo, something she'd always been afraid to do. One day, while scrolling through social media, she stumbled upon a photo of Daniel and Claire. They were at a party, arms wrapped around each other, looking happy. But Emily didn't feel the pain she expected. Instead, she felt relief. They deserved each other, and all the chaos that came with it. For the first time in months, Emily smiled. She had survived. She had walked away from betrayal, heartbreak, and humiliation, and she was stronger for it. And as she closed the app and turned off her phone, she whispered to herself, "Never again." Emily stood on the balcony of her new apartment, the city lights stretching endlessly before her. The air was cool, but it felt refreshing, a stark contrast to the suffocating fog she had lived in during her marriage. She took a deep breath, letting the night breeze carry away the last remnants of her pain. It hadn't been easy to walk away. For weeks, she had questioned herself, wondering if leaving Daniel had been a mistake, if she should have fought harder for their marriage. But deep down, she knew the truth. She had been fighting alone. In the end, Claire wasn't the real problem. Daniel was. His inability to set boundaries, his refusal to protect their marriage, and his lingering attachment to the past were the true betrayals. Claire may have been manipulative, but Daniel had allowed it, and that was something Emily could never forgive. Looking back, Emily realized how much she had lost herself trying to make their relationship work. She had ignored her instincts, silenced her doubts, and sacrificed her own happiness just to hold on to a man who wasn't willing to do the same for her. But now she saw things clearly. Walking away hadn't been an act of weakness. It had been an act of strength. She had reclaimed her dignity, her self-worth, and her freedom. And while the scars of betrayal would always linger, they were reminders of her resilience, not her failure. Emily's phone buzzed, pulling her from her thoughts. It was a text from her sister. "Proud of you. Dinner tomorrow." Emily smiled and typed back, "Can't wait." For the first time in months, she felt excited about the future. She was no longer trapped in the shadows of Daniel and Claire's twisted relationship. She was free to write her own story, one that didn't revolve around betrayal and heartbreak. As she poured herself a glass of wine and curled up on the couch, Emily reflected on the lessons she had learned. Trust your instincts. That nagging feeling in her gut had been right all along. She had ignored the signs, hoping for the best, but in the end, the truth had been impossible to hide. Set boundaries and enforce them. Love shouldn't come at the cost of self-respect. She had let Daniel push her boundaries too many times, and it had cost her dearly. Never settle for less than you deserve. Being someone's second choice was never enough. Emily had learned that real love required commitment, trust, and mutual respect, none of which Daniel had given her. Walking away is sometimes the strongest choice. Leaving Daniel had been painful, but staying would have been worse. She had chosen herself, and that was the most empowering decision she had ever made. Emily took one last sip of her wine and smiled. She wasn't bitter anymore. She wasn't broken. She was free. And as she looked out at the city, she knew that this was just the beginning of her story. A story where she was finally the main character, not a supporting role in someone else's drama. What would you do if you were in Emily's shoes? Could you walk away from a marriage built on lies and betrayal? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your take on this shocking story. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more jaw-dropping stories about love, betrayal, and resilience. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next.